You think this is a joke? The words cracked across the sun-blasted range at Fort Ironwood. Arizona. Staff Sergeant Brandon Cole, square-jawed and brimming with the cocky energy of youth, pointed at the rifle on the bench. His squad of Marines smirked behind him, their sleek Barretts and MK-13s gleaming. The rifle they mocked looked like a relic, a battered M1903 Springfield, scarred by decades, its fore-end bound with a strip of faded orange tape. To Cole, it was laughable. To Elias Monroe, 86 years old, steady as bedrock, it was everything. Monroe said nothing. His veined hands slid a hand-loaded round into the chamber with ritual calm. The whispers behind Cole sharpened Grandpa's lost. Bet that thing falls apart if he sneezes. Cole stepped in, looming over Monroe. Range card and certification. Old-timer. Can't have junk on a Marine line. Hand it over. Monroe's bolt locked home with a metallic click that silenced the laughter. He turned at last, pale gray eyes steady as a scope. No anger, no fear, just patience, the kind that outlasts storms. Cole snatched up the laminated card from the bench. His smirk faltered at the word stamped across the dateline, permanent. Signed decades earlier by a base commander long retired. He tossed it back, sneering, not how we do things anymore. Rules change. His hand reached for the rifle. Monroe's grip clamped over the receiver fast, unshakable. His voice was low, almost gentle, but unyielding steel. Don't touch my rifle. Cole froze, caught in the ancient weight of the old man's stare. But with his men watching, retreat wasn't an option. From the back of the squad, one Marine snorted, pointing at the orange tape. Seriously? Sir, what's with the rap out of glue? Laughter broke again. But for Elias Monroe. The desert sun vanished. Gunpowder and heat dissolved into frozen air, pine smoke, and the echo of Yongcheon Reservoir. 1950. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next shocking military story. The laughter circled like wolves. But to Monroe, it wasn't laughter anymore. It was the whistle of an Arctic wind. The range dissolved into white frost and fire. He could feel the sting of frozen fingers. The stock of his Springfield split nearly in two, the orange tape binding it back together in desperate defiance for a heartbeat. He was 24 again, alone, frostbitten, carrying the survival of 39 men on his shoulders. He blinked, and the desert snapped back the heat, the dust, the brittle air. His thumb brushed the tape. After 75 years, it was still real. Monroe remained silent, immovable. Cole mistook that silence for defiance. He leaned in, shadow falling across the bench. Last chance. Old man, hand it over, or I'll call MPs. You'll be cuffed before you know it. The squad chuckled. One mimed handcuffs, another whispered. Relics about to get locked up. Their laughter was brittle, feeding on bravado rather than confidence across the range. Frank Doyle lowered his binoculars, a retired master sergeant and now range master. Doyle had watched Monroe for years, steady, precise, respectful. He knew the truth: the old man could outshoot half the swaggering snipers who mocked him. Doyle's rule was never to interfere with training. But this wasn't training. This was a mistake spiraling into disgrace. He reached for the red phone, the direct line to Fort Ironwood Command. His gut tightened as he dialed. Operations. Sergeant Major Rourke. Rourke. It's Doyle at long range. We've got trouble. Brandon Cole is threatening to confiscate a civilian's rifle. A sigh crackled over the line. Cole again. Who's the civilian? Doyle swallowed. Name's Elias Monroe. Silence. Heavy. Dangerous. Then Rourke's voice snapped like steel on stone. Say that again. Elias Monroe. Rifle's got orange tape on the stock. A chair scraped violently against the floor. Rourke's tone detonated. Keep everyone there. Nobody touches that man or that rifle. I'm on my way, and so is the base commander. The line went dead. Back on the range. Brandon Cole puffed his chest, oblivious to the storm already racing toward him. Inside Fort Ironwood's operations center, Sergeant Major Victor Rourke didn't move at first. He set the receiver down, walked to the wall, and stopped at a plaque of polished wood. Dozens of names gleamed in brass: generals, Medal of Honor recipients, legends. His calloused finger froze over one. Gunnery Sergeant Elias Monroe. Rourke's voice was low, steady, dangerous. Captain, get Colonel Harlan. Now, sir. The colonel's in with the division commander. I don't care if he's with the commandant. Tell him we have a code Indigo. Tell him it's Elias Monroe. The captain blinked. Code Indigo? I've never... You wouldn't. Rourke cut in, his voice snapping like a rifle bolt. It's a code we made for Legends men whose names are written into the Corps itself. He spun, barking orders with drill instructor force. 3-vehicle escort, Service Alpha. Get the base historian on the line with Monroe's citation. You pull Sergeant Cole's file. 5 minutes. The floor erupted into motion. Phones lit. Officers sprinted. Urgency flooded the room. Rourke paused at the doorway, jaw tight, eyes like granite. His words carried over the chaos. Son. Elias Monroe is the reason this Corps has a sniper program. He held a ridgeline for 18 hours, frostbitten and bleeding, against 300 enemies, so that 39 Marines could escape Yongcheon Reservoir. He did it with a rifle split in half, bound with tape stripped from a pilot's kit. He isn't just a veteran. He is the foundation. Back on the range. Brandon Cole's patience cracked. The uneasy hush in his squad's laughter, the silent weight of onlookers, all of it gnawed at him. His voice rose, sharp and brittle. That's it. You're detained for disobeying a direct order. This weapon is evidence. He lunged. Monroe didn't resist. He simply drew the rifle close to his chest, as though guarding a flag. Not aggression finality, a line no one would cross. Cole's face reddened. He snatched his radio, thumb jabbing the transmit, but the sound cut him off. Not gunfire, not laughter. Tires, heavy, synchronized, rolling fast over gravel. Heads turned. 3 black SUVs tore down the drive, dust boiling behind them. They didn't stop at the lot. They surged straight onto the firing line, halting in perfect formation, engines growling, doors opened in unison. Out stepped Colonel Marcus Harlan, silver eagles gleaming, uniform pressed like armor, chest heavy with ribbons. Behind him came Rourke, eyes hard as stone, flanked by senior NCOs whose faces were storm clouds. Cole froze, radio limp in his hand, bravado draining away. The base commander himself had come for Elias Monroe. Colonel Harlan's gaze cut across the range, cold as a blade, until it found the old man holding the battered rifle. In that moment, the steel in his eyes melted into something deeper, reverence, absolute and undeniable. He strode forward, shoes crunching gravel. Passing Cole without so much as a glance, his steps were deliberate, purposeful. He stopped 3 feet from Monroe, straightened his spine, and executed the sharpest salute of his career. His arm locked, his eyes locked, his voice carrying like a command. Gunnery Sergeant Elias Monroe, Colonel Marcus Harlan. Base Commander, it is my profound honor to see you again. Sir, behind him. Rourke and the senior NCOs snapped to attention, heels slamming together like a rifle volley. Monroe, who had weathered every insult and threat without flinching, lowered the rifle. His trembling hand rose in return. The salute aged but perfect. His rasping voice carried just enough good to see you're keeping the place in order. Colonel, Cole's blood iced over. His thoughts scrambled. Failing to reconcile the truth, this frail old man was Gunnery Sergeant Monroe, the man his commander saluted. The colonel dropped his salute, turning his gaze on Cole. Whatever warmth had been there vanished, replaced by glacial fury. "Sergeant." Harlan's voice was quiet, and that was worse than shouting. "What exactly were you doing?" Cole's mouth opened, but no words came. Panic strangled his throat. Rourke stepped forward, tablet in hand, his eyes pinning Cole like a bayonet. "Sir, I think the sergeant and his men might benefit from a history lesson." Harlan nodded once. "Proceed." Rourke's voice rose, sharp and unrelenting. Gunnery Sergeant Elias Monroe, United States Marine Corps. Retired. Enlisted, 1948. Korean War. Battle of Yongcheon Reservoir. December 1950. Then, Corporal Monroe held the Western Ridge for 18 consecutive hours in -32 degrees. After his platoon leader was killed and his weapon shattered, with nothing but tape binding the stock. He repelled repeated assaults, accounting for 60 confirmed kills and saving 39 Marines. For this, he received the Navy Cross. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Phones rose, capturing history unfolding. The young Marines behind Cole went pale, their laughter curdling into shame. Rourke pressed on 3 combat tours in Vietnam, 2 Silver Stars, 3 Purple Hearts, 20 years as chief instructor at Paris Island Marksmanship Training Unit, where he authored the doctrines that remain the backbone of our sniper program. He trained 3 Medal of Honor recipients, 7 Navy Cross recipients, and thousands of Marines. Retired in 1985 after 37 years of service. When Rourke lowered the tablet, silence smothered the range. Every gaze fixed on Monroe not as an old man, but as a monument. His hand rested gently on the taped rifle, the scar of battle preserved in cloth and steel. Harlan turned back to Cole, his words a venomous hiss. "You dare lecture this man? That tape has more history than your entire platoon combined. Gunnery Sergeant Monroe is not a relic. He is the standard. And you failed as a Marine, as a leader, as a man. You and your squad will report to my office in 1 hour. In service, Alphas. Spend the time contemplating the magnitude of your ignorance." He turned his back on Cole, dismissing him like dust, and faced Monroe once more. His expression softened, and the entire range held its breath, waiting for what would come next. "Gunny, I'm profoundly sorry for the disrespect you were shown here today." Colonel Harlan's voice carried the weight of every Marine on that line. Elias Monroe finally looked up. His pale gray eyes shifted from the colonel to Sergeant Brandon Cole, who stood stiff, shame burning across his face. Monroe's lips curved into a faint, sad smile. He placed a calming hand on Harlan's arm. "They're children, Colonel," he said softly. "We raise them to be lions. Sometimes a young lion's roar is louder than his wisdom. That's not failure, it's just growing." His gaze locked on Cole. The younger man flinched, but Monroe's tone was steady, almost paternal. "The Corps doesn't need you perfect. Son, it needs you to learn." His thumb brushed the orange tape on the rifle, and for a heartbeat the world flickered. He was 24 again, standing in the aftermath of Yongcheon Reservoir, frostbitten and filthy, holding the same rifle patched together with a pilot's tape. A wounded Marine had once called it ugly. Monroe had whispered back through cracked lips, "It works. When everything else is broken, that's all that matters." That lesson lived on. Perseverance. Strength, not in perfection, but in refusing to let things fall apart. The consequences for Cole and his squad were not punishment, but education. For 2 weeks they reported not to the range, but to the base historian. They pored over letters, after-action reports, and oral histories from men who had bled at Yongcheon. Cole read Monroe's Navy Cross citation from the original yellowing page, and for the first time, he understood the weight of the uniform he wore. Weeks later, Cole found himself in a quiet diner off base. When Monroe shuffled in and sat at the counter, Cole's heart thundered. He stood, walked over, and said quietly, "Gunnery Sergeant Monroe?" Monroe turned, unreadable, then nodded. "Sergeant. I never apologized properly. I was arrogant, disrespectful. I'm sorry." The old Marine studied him, then gestured to the empty stool. "Sit. Son, coffee's on me." They talked for an hour about rifles, battles, and the burden of wearing the eagle, globe, and anchor. A bridge was built, not with grand speeches, but with quiet understanding, because heroes don't always shout their stories. Sometimes they just keep showing up scarred, steady, and unbroken. True strength is not about being flawless, but about holding together what matters most, Your Honor. Your brothers, your word when everything else is falling apart.